The great hall was quiet. Too quiet. Elder Vexthara walked slowly across the smooth floor. Her 4 eyes looked at each member of the Galactic Council. She had lived for over 3,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched species grow from simple creatures to masters of space travel. But today she felt fear. The hologram behind her showed a small blue planet. It spun slowly in the darkness of space. To most beings in the hall, it looked peaceful, beautiful even. But Vexthara knew better. She knew what lived on that world. "Council members," she began. Her voice was old but strong. "We must talk about this planet. The beings there call themselves humans. We must never make contact with them." A low rumble of voices filled the hall. Commander Zoltek stood up. He was tall and covered in dark scales. His red eyes glowed with anger. The Draxian Empire had ruled 20 star systems for 1,000 years. They feared nothing. "Elder Vexthara," Zoltek said. His voice was like grinding stone. "These humans have barely learned to travel between stars. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. How can such a young species be dangerous to us?" The elder's face grew dark. She had expected this question. She pressed a button on her control device. The hologram changed. Now it showed images of Earth's history. Cities on fire. Great wars. Machines of destruction. "Look closely, Commander," she said. "What do you see?" Zoltek stared at the images. "I see a violent species. They fight each other constantly. This proves they are weak, not strong." "No," Vexthara said. "You see their greatest strength. They do not just fight. They learn from every fight. Each war makes them stronger. Each defeat teaches them something new." She changed the image again. Now it showed human cities after great disasters. Earthquakes had destroyed buildings. Floods had washed away homes. Diseases had killed millions. But in each image, the humans were rebuilding, making things better than before. "When we face disaster, we try to return to how things were," the elder said. "Humans face disaster and make something new, something better. They do not just survive. They grow." Ambassador Linara of the Altarian Federation raised her blue hand. The Altarians were known for their peaceful ways. They had not fought a war in 500 years. "Surely you are wrong, Elder," Linara said. Her voice was soft and musical. "Our scouts report that humans are divided. They have many different nations, many different beliefs. They cannot even unite their own world. How could they threaten a galaxy?" Vexthara had lived long enough to see this mistake before. Young species always thought unity meant agreement. They were wrong. Their divisions make them stronger, not weaker, she explained. When all beings think the same way, they become slow to change. When beings think differently, they push each other to grow. She showed new images. Human scientists from different nations working together. Human artists creating new forms of beauty. Human explorers pushing into unknown places. Competition drives them forward, Vexthara continued. While we seek peace and stability, they seek challenge and change. While we try to maintain balance, they try to break through limits. The images changed again. This time they showed human. Space exploration, their first clumsy rockets, their early space stations, their first trips to other planets in their system. "Watch how fast they learn," the elder said. In less than 100 of their years, they went from flying in simple aircraft to walking on their moon. In another 100 years, they were building colonies on other worlds. The council members shifted in their seats. The numbers were concerning. Most species took thousands of years to master space travel. Humans had done it in centuries. "But Elder," said Counselor Nixara of the Kethmori, "they are still bound to their own solar system. Their fastest ships would take decades to reach even the nearest star systems. Vexthara's expression grew even more serious. That was true. Last year? It is not true today? She activated a new set of images. These were recent, very recent. They showed human ships moving faster than should be possible. Ships using technology that was clearly not of human origin. They have begun too. Reverse engineer crashed alien vessels, she said. In 6 months, they have advanced their technology by centuries. Not by copying what they found, but by understanding it and making it better. The whole fell silent. Every species in the galaxy had found ancient technology at some point. Most took decades or centuries to understand it. Some never figured it out at all. How is this possible? Whispered Dr. Yothman of the Scientific Nexari Republic. Because they think differently than we do, Vexthara replied. When we find something we do not understand, we study it carefully. We test it slowly. We make sure we understand every part before we try to use it. Humans see something they do not understand, and they take it apart immediately. They break it, they rebuild it. They make it work in ways the original builders never imagined. She paused and looked around the room. 3 months ago, they found a damaged Altarian scout ship that had crashed on their world. The ship's computer contained star charts showing the locations of 12 inhabited systems. Linara gasped. The ship that went missing near the Centauri. System? Yes, Vexthara said. By now, human ships are already traveling toward those systems. Not to explore them carefully over many years, as we would do. They are moving fast, with purpose, with plans we cannot predict. Commander Zol Tuk slammed his clawed hand on his chair. Then we stop them now. We destroy their ships before they can spread. And prove to them that the galaxy is full of enemies? Vexthara asked. Commander, you still do not understand. Humans do not fear enemies. They study enemies. They learn. From enemies. Every attack on them makes them stronger. She brought up more images. Human history was full of examples. Small groups of humans defeating much larger armies. Weak human nations growing strong after being attacked. Human technology. Advancing fastest during times of war. If we attack them now, we will teach them that the galaxy is dangerous, she said. And humans respond to danger by becoming more dangerous themselves. The elder walked to the center of the room. Every eye was on her now. I have studied them for 300 years, she said. I have watched them change from a simple farming species to masters of their world. I have seen them solve problems that would stump our greatest minds. I have watched them turn every disadvantage into an advantage. She gestured to the images still floating in the air. They are curious about everything. They question everything. They improve everything they touch. Most important of all, they never accept that something cannot be done. When we say impossible, they hear challenge. The room was completely quiet now. If we make contact with them, we will not be welcoming them into our galaxy, Vexthara said. We will be giving them our galaxy. Within a century, maybe less, they will not be trying to fit into our civilization. Our civilization will be trying to keep up with them. She looked directly at each council member. This is not a prediction. This is a certainty. Humans cannot be stopped. They can only be avoided. I recommend we stay away from them and hope they stay away from us. The vote that followed was close. Very close. But the younger species outnumbered the older ones. They believed they could handle any challenge. They believed they could control any situation. They had never met humans before. The warning was given. The warning was ignored, Dot, and somewhere in a small corner of the galaxy, human ships were already moving toward the stars. 2 years had passed since Elder Vexthara's warning. The Galactic Council had voted to ignore her advice. The younger species wanted to make contact with the humans. They thought they could control the situation. They thought they were ready. They were wrong. Captain Jake Morrison was having a normal day. The Earth ship Endeavour was doing a survey mission near the edge of known space. They were looking for planets that might support human colonies. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years. He had found 12 good worlds so far. His crew trusted him completely. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station, "I'm getting some strange readings on the sensors." Jake looked at the main screen. Space looked empty, just like always. But the sensors were showing something different. Something big was out there. "What kind of readings?" Jake asked. "Energy signatures like nothing I've seen before," Amy replied. Her voice was excited but nervous. "Whatever it is, it's huge. Maybe 10 times bigger than our ship." Before Jake could respond, space in front of them seemed to bend and twist. The stars moved in impossible ways. Then, suddenly, a ship appeared where empty space had been just moments before. Jake's mouth fell open. The alien ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like it was made of crystal and metal that flowed like water. Lights moved across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was so large that their own ship looked like a toy beside it. "Holy hell," whispered Amy. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Jake forced himself to stay calm. He had trained for this moment, even though he had never really believed it would happen. Humans had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not. "Open a channel, Amy," Jake said. "Let's see if we can talk to them." Amy's hands moved quickly over her controls. She tried different frequencies, different signal types. For a moment, nothing happened. Then their communication system came alive with a signal so clear and strong. It seemed impossible. A face appeared on their main screen. It was clearly not human. The being was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow with soft light. Its eyes were large and intelligent. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "Greetings, humans of the planet Earth," the being said. Its voice was calm and musical. "I am Ambassador Kelthmer of the Nexari Republic. We represent the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species for some time. We believe it is time for us to meet." Jake felt his heart beating fast. This was the most important moment in human history. Everything he said now would matter for the future of his entire species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Endeavour," he replied. We welcome this contact. We've always hoped we would meet other intelligent life someday." Kelthmer's expression seemed pleased. "Your hope is about to become reality, Captain Morrison. We would like to invite a delegation from your government to visit our worlds. There is much we need to discuss." Within days, the news had spread across Earth. Humans were not alone. Advanced alien civilizations wanted to meet them. The world's governments worked together faster than ever before to choose a delegation for. This first meeting, Secretary of State Linda Hayes led the human team. She was known for being smart and tough in negotiations. With her went Dr. Carl Bennett, one of Earth's best scientists, and Colonel Rick Daniels, a military expert. Each had been chosen for their skills, but none of them knew what they were. Really walking in to dot the trip to the Nexari homeworld took 3 days in one of their ships. The alien technology was incredible. The human delegation spent the entire journey asking questions and taking notes. The Nexari crew was impressed by how quickly the humans learned. "Most species need months to understand our basic systems," explained Captain Zelther. "You seem to grasp them in hours." Dr. Bennett smiled. "We're naturally curious, I suppose. When we see something new, we want to know how it works." What Bennett did not say was that he was already thinking of ways to improve their technology. He could see inefficiencies in their power systems. He had ideas for making their engines run better, but he kept these thoughts to himself for now. The Nexari homeworld was beautiful, beyond imagination. Cities of crystal and light stretched across. Continents. Gardens filled with impossible plants grew between buildings that reached toward the clouds. The sky was filled with flying vehicles that moved in perfect harmony. But what impressed the humans most was not the beauty. It was the age. This civilization had been building for thousands of years. Everything was perfect, planned, stable. Nothing seemed to change or grow. During their first meeting with the Nexari leadership, Linda Hayes asked the question that was on everyone's mind. How many other species are part of this galactic council? 47 civilized species across the galaxy, replied Prime Minister Yal Ditha, each contributing their unique strengths to our peaceful society. And how long has this council existed? Linda asked. Nearly 5,000 of your Earth years, came the reply. We have achieved perfect balance and harmony across the stars. Colonel Daniels leaned forward. Perfect balance? That sounds static. Don't you face any challenges? Any problems that need solving? The Nexari leaders looked confused by the question. We have eliminated most challenges through careful planning and cooperation. Problems are prevented before they occur. The humans exchanged glances. This was not how their species worked at all. It was during a tour of their research facilities that things started to change. Dr. Bennett was shown their most advanced laboratories. The Nexari scientists were proud of their achievements. They had spent centuries perfecting their technology. Bennett examined their quantum energy systems carefully. The Nexari scientists watched him with interest. Most visiting species needed weeks to understand even the basics of their work. After just 2 hours, Bennett made a comment that changed everything. Your quantum matrices are very impressive, he said politely. But I noticed they're only running at about 67% efficiency. Dr. Ulanef, the lead Nexari scientist, looked surprised. 67%? That cannot be correct. These systems have been optimized for over 2 centuries. Bennett pulled out a small device and connected it to their systems. Numbers and equations appeared on the screen faster than the Nexari could follow. If you adjust the harmonic frequency by about 0.75%, Bennett explained, and recalibrate the containment field to match, you could boost your output by nearly 40%. Dr. Ulanef ran the calculations. The other Nexari scientists gathered around, checking the numbers again and again. Bennett was right. In 2 hours, a human had found a way to improve technology that had remained unchanged for 200 years. Word of this discovery spread quickly through the Nexari government. Within hours, it had reached the Galactic Council. Within days, every species in the galaxy knew about it. Elder Vexthara received the news while she was tending to her meditation garden. She had been expecting something like this. The humans had been in contact with galactic civilization for less than a week, and they were already changing it. Ambassador Kelthmer sent an urgent message to the Council. The human Dr. Bennett has improved our primary energy systems by 40%. He claims this is just the beginning. He says he can see improvements we could make to our ships, our computers, our entire infrastructure. The message caused panic among the older species. The Kefmori had built their society on the idea that perfection took time. The idea that someone could casually improve their most advanced technology was frightening. But it was not just technology. The humans were changing other things too. Linda Hayes met with trade representatives from 12 different species. Within hours, she had identified inefficiencies in their trading systems that had existed for centuries. She proposed solutions that could increase profits for everyone involved. Colonel Daniels spoke with military leaders from 6 worlds. He pointed out weaknesses in their defensive strategies that none of them had noticed. His suggestions were simple but brilliant. The most disturbing report came from a cultural exchange meeting. Dr. Susan Park, a human anthropologist who had joined the delegation, made an observation that shook the foundation of galactic society. "You've all achieved peace by eliminating competition," she told a gathering of species representatives. "But competition drives growth. Without it, you've also eliminated progress." This statement was met with silence. For thousands of years, the galactic species had prided themselves on their peaceful, stable civilizations. The idea that this might be a weakness was difficult to accept. "Surely peace is better than the chaos of constant competition," argued Ambassador Linara of the Altarians. "Not chaos," Dr. Park replied. "Challenge. We compete not to destroy each other, but to push each other to be better. Our conflicts have driven our greatest discoveries. Our disagreements have led to our strongest alliances." As the first week of contact ended, reports were flowing back to the Galactic Council at an alarming rate. The humans were not just participating in galactic civilization. They were transforming it. Every system they examined, they improved. Every process they observed, they optimized. Every tradition they encountered, they questioned. Elder Vexthara called an emergency session of the council. "It has begun," she announced to the assembled representatives. In 1 week, the *6 months had passed since first contact. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected. Humans were everywhere now, and everywhere they went, things got better. This should have been good news. But for many of the older species, it was terrifying. Marcus Webb had always been good at making deals. On Earth, he had built a small trading company into one of the largest shipping corporations on the planet. When the aliens made contact, he saw opportunity where others saw uncertainty. Now, he stood in the great marketplace of Kepler Station, the largest trading hub in the galaxy. Alien merchants from dozens of worlds bought and sold goods that had been traded the same way for centuries. But Marcus saw problems everywhere he looked. "Lisa," he said to his business partner, Lisa Chun, "look at this system. They're moving cargo through 17 different checkpoints. Each one takes hours. Each one charges fees. And half of the inspections are checking for the same things." Lisa nodded as she studied her datapad. She had run the numbers 3 times to make sure. She was right. If we could streamline this process, cut out the redundant steps, we could reduce shipping time by 60% and costs by 40%. The alien merchants nearby heard this conversation. At first, they were skeptical. The current system had worked for over 1,000 years. Why change it now? But Marcus and Lisa did not just talk about changes. They demonstrated them. They offered to handle shipments for several merchants using their new methods. Within a week, goods that normally took a month to ship across the galaxy were arriving in just 12 days. Word spread quickly. Soon, human trading methods were being adopted by merchants across dozens of worlds. Ancient trade guilds that had controlled galactic commerce for millennia found themselves struggling to keep up with innovations that seemed to appear daily. On the other side of the galaxy, Colonel Rick Daniels was facing a different kind of challenge. The Altarian Federation was having trouble with pirates. The Veltar were a nomadic species that raided trade routes and border colonies. For decades, the Altarians had tried to stop them using traditional patrol methods. General Mordain showed Colonel Daniels their defensive setup. "We have patrol ships covering all major trade routes," the Altarian commander explained. "We have early warning stations on every border world. We respond to every attack as quickly as possible." Daniels studied the tactical displays for several hours. The Altarian strategy was solid but predictable. They were playing defense, reacting to attacks after they happened. The pirates had learned to work around their patterns. "General," Daniels said finally, "you're fighting the last war. Not the current one. The Veltar have adapted to your defensive strategy. You need to change the game. What do you suggest? Mordain asked. Stop reacting to their moves. Start controlling their options. Daniel spent the next 3 weeks completely reorganizing the Altarian Defense Network. Instead of fixed patrols, he created mobile response teams. Instead of waiting for attacks, he used predictive analysis to figure out where attacks were most likely to happen. Most importantly, he stopped thinking of the pirates as a military problem and started thinking of them as a logistics problem. Pirates need supplies, fuel, and places to hide, he explained to the Altarian commanders. Instead of chasing their ships, we cut off their support network. The new strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. Pirate attacks did not just decrease. They stopped completely. The Veltar found themselves unable to operate in Altarian space at all. But the most dramatic changes were happening in the field of science. Dr. Susan Park had been assigned to work with Kethmori researchers on their homeworld. The Kethmori were the oldest species in the galaxy. Their civilization had existed for over 10,000 years. They were also the most cautious. They studied everything for centuries before drawing conclusions. They preserved ancient artifacts with religious devotion. They believed that wisdom came only with time and patience. Dr. Park had been given access to their most sacred archaeological site. For 3,000 years, Kethmori scholars had been studying ancient ruins left by their ancestors. The artifacts were beautiful but mysterious. No one had ever figured out what they were for. Park spent exactly 6 hours examining the artifacts. Then she called a meeting with the senior Kethmori researchers. These aren't just historical objects, she announced. They're components of a massive engineering project. Your ancestors weren't just building monuments. They were reshaping entire solar systems. The Kethmori scholars stared at her in shock. Professor Yexthol, who had spent 4 centuries studying the artifacts, could barely speak. That is impossible, he stammered. We have analyzed these objects for millennia. They are clearly ceremonial in nature. Park pulled out her portable analyzer and connected it to the nearest artifact. The device immediately began displaying complex energy patterns and mathematical formulas. This object is designed to manipulate gravitational fields on a planetary scale, she explained. These symbols that you thought were decorative? They're actually engineering specifications. Your ancestors were moving moons, adjusting planetary orbits, creating custom solar systems. She moved to another artifact. This one controlled stellar output. They were making stars burn brighter or dimmer as needed. The implications were staggering. The Kethmori had always believed their ancestors were wise, but limited by ancient technology. The idea that they had been stellar engineers was beyond comprehension. But Park was not finished. The most interesting part is that all of these artifacts are linked. They were designed to work together as part of a galactic construction project. Your ancestors were not just changing individual worlds. They were redesigning the entire structure of local space. Within days, the Kethmori understanding of their own history had been completely transformed. If humans could decode their greatest mysteries in ours, what did that say about human intelligence? What did it say about Kethmori intelligence? Similar disruptions were happening across the galaxy. On Earth, the integration of alien technology was proceeding at an incredible pace. Human engineers and scientists were not just copying alien designs. They were improving them. Tony Rodriguez had started as a simple mechanic in Detroit. Now he was leading a team that was redesigning Nexari propulsion systems. The aliens had been using the same engine designs for 800 years. Tony's team had improved them by 30% in just 2 months. The problem with your current design, Tony explained to the amazed Nexari engineers, is that you're thinking too much about stability and not enough about efficiency. You've optimized for safety, but you've sacrificed performance. His modifications were not just faster. They were also more reliable than the original designs. The Nexari found themselves in the strange position of learning about their own technology from a species that had discovered space travel just recently. Meanwhile, artist and programmer Mia Foster was working with Altarian biotechnologists on something completely new. The Altarians had developed living buildings that could grow and adapt to their inhabitants' needs. But they had never thought to make them respond to emotions. Mia's collaboration resulted in architecture that was truly alive. Buildings that could sense the mood of the people inside them and adjust lighting, temperature, and even room layout to improve comfort and productivity. We always thought of buildings as static structures, admitted Dr. Velinara, the lead Altarian researcher. You have shown us that they can be partners. But perhaps the most concerning development came from Dr. Betty Sullivan's work with Draxian genetics. The Draxians were proud of their physical superiority. They were stronger, faster, and more durable than most species in the galaxy. Their genetic structure had remained unchanged for millions of years. Dr. Sullivan was studying their DNA to better understand how different species had evolved. What she found was unexpected. Your species has incredible genetic stability, she told the Draxian research team. Your DNA has barely changed in eons. That's actually quite remarkable. Commander Vex Goth, the military liaison, seemed pleased. We have achieved genetic perfection through natural selection. Actually, that's not quite right, Sullivan replied. You've achieved genetic stagnation. Your stability means you don't adapt to new challenges. Humans have much more genetic flexibility. That's why we keep surprising you. She brought up comparison charts on her screen. Look at these mutation rates. Your species changes maybe one genetic marker per million years. Humans change thousands of markers per generation. That makes us unpredictable, but it also makes us adaptable. The Draxian scientists realized they were looking at something fundamental about evolution and intelligence. Stability was not always strength. Sometimes it was weakness. This is why human behavior is so difficult to predict, Sullivan continued. We're not just culturally diverse. We're genetically diverse. Every human thinks slightly differently. Because we're all slightly different at a biological level. The implications were frightening. If humans were genetically programmed to be unpredictable and adaptable, how could any species hope to control or contain them? Reports of these developments reached the Galactic Council weekly. Each report was more disturbing. A crisis came without warning. It started as a simple argument over mining rights between the Altarian Federation and the Corvin Syndicate. Both sides claimed the same asteroid field. Both sides had legal documents supporting their claim. In the old days, such disputes were settled through years of careful negotiation. But these were not the old days anymore. The Corvin Syndicate was desperate. Their entire economy was built on controlling rare mineral deposits throughout the galaxy. These minerals powered their technology and funded their government. Without them, their civilization would collapse. The Altarian Federation was equally determined. They needed the minerals to build new colonies for their growing population. Their peaceful philosophy did not mean they would back down from legitimate claims. Within weeks, the dispute had escalated into something the galaxy had not seen in over 3 centuries. Open warfare. The first battles were small, skirmishes between mining ships and escort vessels. But as both sides called in reinforcements, the conflict grew larger and more dangerous. Soon, entire fleets were facing each other across the asteroid field. The Galactic Council was paralyzed. Half the members supported the Altarians. Half supported the Corvins. The traditional methods of peaceful resolution were failing. Both sides requested human assistance. They expected to gain some modest technological advantage or strategic advice. They had no idea what they were really asking for. General Patricia Wells arrived at the conflict zone with a small team of military advisors. She was known for her innovative strategies, but even her reputation did not prepare the aliens for what happened next. She spent exactly 1 day reviewing the situation. She studied the territorial claims, the resource surveys, the military positions, and the economic factors driving the conflict. Then she called a meeting with commanders from both sides. "You're both fighting the wrong war," she announced. Admiral Colveth of the Corvin Syndicate was not pleased. "General Wells, we appreciate your offer to help, but this is a simple matter of territorial rights. The Corvins have legal claim to these resources." "And we have an equally valid claim," responded Admiral Yelanara of the Altarian fleet. "Our surveys were filed first with the Council." General Wells activated her holographic display. Instead of showing military positions or legal documents, it showed something else entirely: economic projections and technological forecasts. "Minerals you're fighting over will be worthless in 50 years, she said calmly. Both admirals stared at her in confusion. "Explain," demanded Cole VETH. Wells nodded to Dr. Frank Miller, her science advisor. He had been working with human research teams back on Earth for the past 6 months. "We've developed synthetic alternatives to all the rare minerals you're fighting over," Miller explained. "Not just alternatives, better alternatives. They're stronger, more stable, and can be produced anywhere with basic industrial equipment." He activated his own display, showing chemical formulations and production processes. "The materials you're fighting for have 3 major weaknesses," Miller continued. "They're unstable in high-energy environments. They degrade over time, and they're extremely difficult to refine. Our synthetic versions eliminate all these problems." Admiral Yelanara leaned forward. "Are you saying these resources are no longer valuable?" "I'm saying the entire economic model that created this conflict is about to become obsolete," Miller replied. "The implications hit both sides like physical blows." The Corvin Syndicate's entire power structure was built on controlling scarce resources. The Altarian Federation's expansion plans depended on securing mineral rights. If the resources became worthless, what were they fighting for? But General Wells was not finished. She had studied both civilizations carefully, and she saw something they did not see themselves. "The real problem is not who controls these specific resources," she said. "The real problem is that both of your civilizations are built on the assumption that resources are scarce. That assumption is wrong." She brought up new displays showing production capacity, energy generation, and technological capabilities across both civilizations. The Corvins control resources because they think someone has to control them. The Altarians want resources because they think they need them. Both of you are thinking like species that evolved in a universe of limitations. Admiral Colveth was growing frustrated. "Resources are limited. That is basic reality." "No," Wells replied. "Resources are only limited if you accept the limitations. Humans learn to think beyond limitations." She showed them projections of human industrial development, food production that could feed billions, energy generation that could power entire star systems, manufacturing that could produce anything needed. Instead of fighting over resources, why not make resources irrelevant? She asked. The question was so radical that both sides needed hours just to understand what she was suggesting. The idea of post-scarcity economics was completely outside their experience. Ambassador Helen Park, the diplomatic representative of the human team, presented the formal peace proposal 3 days later. Instead of a traditional treaty dividing resources, it was something unprecedented, a complete restructuring of both civilizations' economic systems. "We propose a 3-phase transition," Park explained to the assembled representatives. Phase 1. Immediate ceasefire and resource sharing while new technologies are implemented. Phase 2. Joint development of synthetic alternatives and post-scarcity infrastructure. Phase 3. Complete elimination of resource-based economics. The silence in the negotiation chamber was deafening. "You're asking us to change the fundamental basis of our civilizations," said Minister Velkorth of the Corvan government. "Yes," Park replied simply, "because your current systems are about to become obsolete, whether you change them or not. We're offering you a way to control that change instead of being destroyed by it." The negotiations took weeks. Both sides had to completely rethink everything they believed about economics, politics, and social organization. Human advisors worked around the clock, answering questions and demonstrating technologies that seemed like magic to the aliens. But the most difficult part was not the technology. It was the psychology. "Our entire social structure is based on managing limited resources," explained Cultural Minister Lindessa of the Altarians. "If resources become unlimited, what holds our society together?" Dr. Sarah Kim, a human sociologist, had studied this problem extensively. You replace competition for resources with competition for achievement. Instead of fighting over what exists, you compete to create what doesn't exist yet. 5 years had passed since the first human ship had appeared in galactic space. The galaxy that existed now was so different from before that many older beings could barely recognize it. The changes had not come through war or conquest. They had come through something much more powerful: simple human presence. On New Geneva, the first joint human-alien colony, Mayor Steve Campbell stood on the observation deck of the Central Administration Building. Below him stretched a city that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Humans lived and worked alongside 12 different alien species in perfect harmony. But it was not the harmony of sameness. It was the harmony of difference. The Kethmori district used their long-term thinking to plan city development that would remain beautiful for centuries. The Draxian quarter featured massive construction projects that showcased their incredible strength. The Altarian gardens brought peace and tranquility to the entire colony. The Nexari research centers pushed the boundaries of science and technology. And throughout it all, humans served as the connecting tissue that made everything work together. Mayor Campbell called Dr. Nancy Price as she approached. She was a cultural anthropologist who had been studying the colony since its founding. "The Council of Elders has arrived for the annual evaluation." Steve nodded. Every year, representatives from all the major galactic civilizations came to observe New Geneva. They were trying to understand how such different species could live together so successfully. The secret, Steve knew, was that they had stopped trying to eliminate differences. Instead, they had learned to use differences as strengths. The breakthrough had come from Dr. Price herself. During the colony's first year, there had been constant conflicts between the different species. Each group had tried to solve problems using their own methods. The results had been chaos. That was when Dr. Price had made her revolutionary observation. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," she had told the Colonial Council. "We're treating diversity like a problem to solve. But diversity is not a problem. It's a resource." She had shown them examples from human history. "Our greatest achievements came when different groups of humans worked together. Artists and scientists, dreamers and builders, competitors and cooperators. We succeed because we're different, not despite being different." The idea had been radical for the galactic species. For thousands of years, they had sought unity through similarity. Each civilization had tried to create perfect harmony by making everyone think and act the same way. Humans approached diversity from the opposite direction. They maximized differences and then found ways to make those differences work together. The results had been extraordinary. Kethmori patience combined with human urgency created planning systems that were both thorough and efficient. Altarian empathy, paired with Draxian strength, produced security forces that were both gentle and effective. Nexari precision enhanced by human creativity led to technologies that no species could have developed alone. But New Geneva was just one example of the transformation. The changes were happening everywhere. Commander Elena Scott stood on the bridge of the Starship Unity, the first truly integrated vessel in the Galactic Defense Force. Her crew included members from 15 different species, each contributing their unique abilities to the ship's mission. They were responding to the Outer Rim crisis, where an unknown alien force had been attacking frontier colonies. Traditional military responses had failed. The attackers were too advanced, too organized, and too determined. But Elena's approach was uniquely human in its audacity. "We're not going to fight them," she announced during the mission briefing. "We're going to understand them." Lieutenant Zarveth, her Draxian tactical officer, was confused. "Commander, these beings had destroyed 3 colonies. They have shown no interest in communication. That's because everyone who has approached them has approached them as enemies," Elena replied. "We're going to approach them as potential friends." His strategy was risky beyond measure. Instead of assembling a battle fleet, Helena assembled a cultural delegation. Instead of preparing for war, she prepared for conversation with Dr. Bill Martinez. The ship's xenopsychologist had studied the attack patterns carefully. "These beings are not acting like conquerors," he had reported. "They're acting like refugees." Elena's intuition proved correct. The unknown aliens were indeed refugees from a dying galaxy. They had traveled for generations to reach this one, only to find it already occupied. Their attacks had been desperate attempts to secure territory for their people. Previous contact attempts had failed because every species had approached them as a problem to be solved. Elena approached them as a potential to be realized. "We understand what it's like to be strangers in a new place," she told their leaders during the first successful communication. "We understand what it's like to fight for survival. But we also know that survival is easier when you have friends." Within months, the refugees had become valued members of galactic society. They brought with them technologies and perspectives from their distant galaxy that advanced everyone's understanding of the universe. That it was a solution that only humans could have conceived, because only humans looked at every challenge as an opportunity for growth. Elder Vexthara, now ancient even by Kethmori standards, watched these developments from her private chambers. She had lived to see her warnings proved both completely right and completely wrong. Humans could not be stopped. That part had been accurate. They had transformed galactic civilization beyond recognition. That part had also been true. But she had been wrong about what that transformation would mean. She activated her personal communication system and sent a message to the Galactic Council. "I wish to address the Council one final time," she requested. 3 days later, she stood once again in the great chamber where she had first warned about humanity. But this time, her message was different. "5 years ago, I warned you that humanity could not be stopped," she began. "I told you they would transform our galaxy beyond recognition. I told you they would not fit into our civilization." She paused and looked around the chamber. Many faces were familiar, but many were new. Human faces sat alongside alien ones in positions of leadership and responsibility. "I was right about everything except what it meant," she continued. "Humans did not come to our galaxy to conquer it. They came to help it grow." She gestured to the displays showing galactic statistics. Trade was more efficient than ever. Conflicts were being resolved through innovation rather than warfare. Scientific advancement was accelerating across all species. Art and culture were flourishing in ways that had not been seen for millennia. "We feared change because we thought change meant destruction," Vexthara said. But humans have shown us that change can mean creation. They have not destroyed our civilizations. They have helped our civilizations become better versions of themselves. Dr. Jim Torres, the first human elected to serve as Galactic Council Speaker, rose to respond. He was young by human standards, barely 40 years old. But he carried himself with the quiet confidence that had become characteristic of human leaders. Elder Vexthara, he said respectfully, we did not come to change your galaxy. We came to learn from it. But we learned something that perhaps you had forgotten. He activated his own display, showing images of cooperation and growth throughout the galaxy. Civilizations, like individuals, grow stronger through challenge and diversity. You had achieved perfect stability, but stability without growth is just another form of death. We helped you remember how to live. Torres gestured to the mixed assembly of beings around him. Look around this chamber. 5 years ago, it was filled with representatives from isolated civilizations, each protecting their own interests. Today, it is filled with partners working toward common goals. He was right. The old model of separate species maintaining careful diplomatic relationships had been replaced by something new, integrated cooperation that made everyone stronger. We did not teach you to be like us, Torres continued. We taught you to be more like yourselves. The Kef Mori are still patient and wise, but now they use that wisdom to plan for growth as well as stability. The Draxians are still strong and proud, but now they use that strength to build as well as defend. The Altarians are still peaceful and empathetic, but now they use that empathy to understand new challenges as well as maintain harmony. Elder Vexthara felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Hope for the future. As the session ended, and the representatives began to leave, she approached Torres privately. Human, she said, I must ask you something. Did your species plan this transformation? Did you know what would happen when you made contact with us? Torres smiled. It was a gentle expression that somehow managed to be both humble and confident. Elder, we had no idea what would happen. We never do. That's what makes life interesting. He paused thoughtfully. We don't plan transformation. We just refuse to accept that things cannot be better than they are. When we see a problem, we try to solve it. When we see potential, we try to realize it. When we see friends, we try to help them grow.